Ahoy, sailors! This is your boy, ER Hunter, aka Earth. I am coming back at you with episode 3 of the Rhetorical Sake, my new podcast. Thank you so much for joining me once again. I'm chilling out here in Southern California. I got my road dog, literally my dog, Irie, chilling, chewing on a bone. You might hear that in the background. And I'm just so grateful to be here. I want to jump right into it because I'm feeling some type of way today, and I've been on a roll. Just released 2 books, launched this podcast, set the date, put out the flyers for a book signing I'm having on May 27th. And it's so funny how when you tell people this, you feel a shift in their energy. You can hear it in their voice, their tone of voice, the questions they ask. And it's kind of like, it's like hating. And it could be discouraging. If I wasn't a go-getter, if I was really trying to be in tune with what someone else thinks of me, then yeah, I would be a little upset that this supposed friend or family member, whoever I'm sharing this moment with or trying to share this moment with, is not joining me and is almost resisting it as if it's too good to be true. And you know what? It's too true to be good. How about that? It's great. It's fantastic. It's amazing. It's priceless. I'm so fucking happy I am finally coming into my own, and I hope that this platform, this medium, these shows, this episode will encourage each and every listener to come into your own. We talked about doing what you do well yesterday, and one of these posts I wrote in college when Facebook was fairly new. I was a freshman. Facebook came out around '07. I graduated high school in '08, and I wrote this whole excerpt about raging, because that's how we describe partying. And it got a lot of traction, and people were reading it out loud to their friends, so I've been told. And at the end I said, and when you rage, rage well. And that has stuck with me. So whatever you're raging for, whatever you're raging with, you're working, you're grinding, you're hustling, rage well. And I will continue to say that. In any case, I have invested a lot of my time in life to entertainment, television, movies, films. As I discussed, created my own short film in college. I have written screenplays of my own. I have about 6 of them registered with the Writers Guild of America. And I'm a fanatic. I'm a movie junkie. And I will binge watch television depending on what it is. I try not to be much of a bandwagon type person. So when it comes to trends, hit series, I kind of wait and see if they actually last rather than just jump on that first season. And then I have several seasons to catch up on. And I stay out of the spoilers because my search feed isn't queuing up any news about them. So I don't know really what happened. And then the buzz dies down a few years later. Like, I watched Lost. I didn't start watching Lost until it was like near the last season was airing. So that was just amazing because I had episode after episode. Needless to say, I had a lot of time on my hands that I probably should have been more productive. But in any case, it all worked out how it was supposed to. I wanted to discuss a couple of new shows that a miniseries, a short film that really stand out to me and gave me reason enough to talk about them. So I wrote this article on BuzzFeed. It's on the community site. I guess they don't post everything that you submit. But when I watched this show, I was so inspired. I was so drawn in. I was just so impressed by how well executed it was in the writing, the production value, the plot thickening. Everything mattered. And I'm going to get to that. But this show is on Netflix, and it's called 7 Seconds. You may have heard of it. 7 Seconds. So I'm going to talk about 7 reasons why 7 Seconds matters. This is Netflix's breakout crime drama. And I truly believe that this is the renaissance. It's starting a renaissance of binge watching, because it definitely enlightened me and gave me a reason to start watching Netflix again. And that's the number one reason. Netflix needed this. The plot thickens in this show as fuck. It's awesome. There's a stellar cast, and it's not set in New York City or LA. It's set in Jersey City. It's this grimy, really tough, just muggy atmosphere, and the tone, the color. I can appreciate that because I'm tired of being catered to as an audience member. That's why we like shows like Atlanta, because they don't pander to the audience. They do what they want. And that is typically more so reality, even though we are escaping in their idea of this drama playing out. So, in my opinion, Netflix is just oversaturated. It's an on-demand market, and for the past 5 years, the media giant has gone from an on-demand city on the hill to a revolving door for any and every niche market audience. So the catalog of passable series that had decent moments, obviously Black Mirror, Ozark, Stranger Things, Orange is the New Black. There might be a couple more that I'm missing, and those of you that will mention those other ones probably fall into those niche markets. So I'm referring to ones that really spanned across, got through to me, a bisexual, black, college-educated, 28-year-old man. So anyone who's considering giving the axe to basic cable, you probably would have done so. And this show came out during the Winter Olympics, so there was nothing on TV. And there was this post-Christmas lull, and it was intensified by this dystopian climate of affairs we citizens of Earth are enduring under the current political climate, tyranny, whatever you want to call it. So this media mogul, Netflix, something that we all rely upon to escape our daily lives, it seemed to lack any sense of direction. The variety of selections were so vast, so random, it left subscribers like you and I without any indication of who to root for. I am an avid couch critic, as I mentioned, and I felt as if the development execs just dumped a whole bunch of pilots, a whole bunch of scripts on a conference table, and everyone was like a mad dash, just scrambled to grab which one looked the best. And then they're like, all right, we're going to do these. And because there's been no type of rhyme or reason to what's been released on Netflix. And every once in a blue moon, you get a gem like this. But I hope that they keep rolling with sustenance, substantive material like this. The lead actress, Claire Hope Ashitay, we saw her in Children of Men, one of my favorite movies. And in this show, she plays District Assistant Attorney KJ Harper. And I love to hate this girl on the show. And I can identify with her because she is an alcoholic. Oh, spoiler alert. Spoiler alert a little bit. I'll try not to give too much away. But she matches this alcoholism with immature stubbornness. And she has us rooting for the anti-hero from the first scene since Heisenberg was introduced. So we saw a couple of shows try to do this. Chicago Justice tried to touch on Black Lives Matter. Didn't work. 7 Seconds brings in the weight of activism and protesting. And it's almost a nuisance, but it becomes a part of this set. It becomes part of this city. And Netflix seems to have finally not only opened its sails, but is also directing the wind with this series. They treat the audience like investigators, rather than spoon feeding us. And it's not just like other cops and robber shows where it's interview, interrogation, confession, routine script work. Hoping this marks the beginning of a renaissance of content being provided. The second reason why 7 seconds matters: daddy issues. I know I can relate to the pain of having daddy issues and lacking a father's approval. So in the lead character KJ, she lacks that approval. It helps me want to root for her. And anyone else that can identify with this, you understand what it's like as you grow up as an adult. You're constantly seeking to improve and be the best because of something that we lacked and we missed out on as a child. And sometimes we don't realize that until we get into therapy, but I use it to my strength. I think that's the best part about learning what your weaknesses are. You can play them to benefit you. That's what adaptation, that's how animals survive. So we have a lot of demonized patriarchs. And we get this from like Breaking Bad. Other shows like This Is Us, they don't demonize the dad, but he's such a hero. He's so perfect. Jack, it's hard to root for him. I want to see him fuck up. I know he's an alcoholic, but he got his shit together. It didn't look easy, but the time that it took seemed easy. Though it's kind of understandable why he had to die because of his perfectionism, now that I think about it. So going on, the third reason why 7 seconds matters: junkies and alcohol. If you're still having trouble abstaining from drinking, if you're not in a program or something, don't plan on stopping by watching this show. This show will make you want to grab a bottle of Bombay Sapphire, some cheap tumblers, limes, and drink like an assistant attorney general, aka KJ. Even more impressive is the creator Vina Sudd's ability to bring the discussion of the opioid crisis to the forefront of this series. If you haven't been affected by this nominated pandemic, and I say nominated because it is totally avoidable, but due to this political, industrial, capitalized, money-making scheme of things, this is a nominated pandemic. This is an elected, a chosen pandemic that could be avoided and surmounted. I love that she mentions it. I love that she brings it to the forefront. Vina, great job, because we need to talk about this. We need to talk about how vast this opioid crisis is and how when people become addicted, their character is tarnished and you lose credibility. I am empowered by confessing my alcoholism because it used to bring me shame. And that's why I embraced it more and I isolated. But what I've gathered from recovery, rehab, and working with other alcoholics is it's my business. I'm deciding to share it with the world because I wish somebody would have talked about it with me. Of course, I wore it as a badge of honor, alcoholism. If somebody called me a junkie in college, probably wouldn't do that. So there's another stigma and it's another genre. And it's difficult. It's a difficult subject. So I appreciate that the show mentions it, brings it up. There's a special character in there. When you watch the show, you'll know exactly who I'm talking about. She kills it. She's great. Fourth reason, it's not about guns. One thing I hate about watching cops and robbers detective shows is that they rely so heavily on the gun prop. This is not about who shot who. And that is why it's so beautiful. It's about ethics. It's about moral consciousness. It's about what do you do when you've already messed up? Do you keep playing into it? The snowball effect of lying, all this stuff. And it's beautiful to watch. It's beautiful to watch because it's so human. And yet, we hope we're never in these situations. The fifth reason why this show matters is that everything matters. Everything you think you know about the investigation, the victim, and the crime, you do. You just won't know it. You won't know that you know everything until the end. And I greatly appreciate how every scene, every line, every interaction contributes to the story of not who done it, but rather who's going to pay for what has been done. The detectives in the show, they make you want to pay attention, and everything from the supporting cast, the rising actions, the lull moments, the quiet moments, every scene matters, and they use it, and I can greatly appreciate that as a writer and a film buff. So, reason number 6, blue lives get us woke. Blue lives get us woke. So the officers in this show are some of the main cast, and they are like family, and we know that in any team sport, anything like that, we will defend our own. So this brings into a conversation. This brings us to a conversation of, Blue Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, and the ethical dilemma about what happens when you're standing in it. And I love to see the portrayal of the cops' perspective transitioning to a position of understanding. I can really appreciate what they did here, and it brings in a consciousness and this human aspect, and it wakes us up and makes us attune as to what it might be like to be in this situation. Because at the end of the day, blue lives are civil servants, and I've worked on cops and robbers shows. One of my best friends, when I got the job in Hollywood, she said, I hope you know you work for one of the most hated institutions in the world. And I'll never forget that, because she was right at that time. And that was when the controversy, we had reached a boiling point. So to see cops shown in both a negative and positive light, it's an awesome thing, and it draws you in. The seventh and final reason why 7 seconds matters: a mother's love. Hashtag Regina King. She's absolutely spellbinding. Never before have medium interior shots of a sedan represented so much safety, so much sanctuary, and so much grief. She plays Latrice Butler, and Regina King brings down the house in this gripping performance. She's going to leave grown men calling for their mama, because something in her, scene after scene, is truly there, and a part of her truly died in that character, and you can see it in her eyes, her semiotics, her body language. We've seen King carry emotional weight before, but this is so much more raw than American Crime. Latrice gives Regina the venue to really delve and stay deeper than tears as a grieving mother. Similar to when she played Erica Murphy in The Leftovers and she was deaf. I love that scene where she runs down the little white boy and she tackles him and she forgets her hearing aid. And she says, "Who sent you?" And he's saying something, but the production, they make you hear it from her perspective, so you can't hear what he's saying. And she said, "Say it again and say it slow." And that, you felt it. It came through the screen. It was more than audio. So I really believe that Regina King is going to be the reigning queen of the Academy this year, or next year, let's say, for award season, if they know what's good for her. And I think they do. It's undeniable. So, 7 reasons why 7 seconds matters. All right, so let's, in the scheme of things, transition to real life. And since we were already set in Jersey City, let's just cross the river and talk about New York City. New York is one of my favorite places. And I had the privilege of attempting to live there for about 4 months in 2014. And I just had to take a nap because I think it's because I'm on these antibiotics and I really don't believe in taking antibiotics, but I was devastatingly sick last week, over the weekend, coming into this week, and as soon as my doctor prescribed those, the congestion, the coughing, everything cleared up. But that could just be that the illness had run its course. So I don't know the causation there. But I do know that these antibiotics are like, I've heard, detonating a nuclear bomb inside your body. And I'm an avid drinker of apple cider vinegar, turmeric in my water constantly. I'll probably have, if a glass is 8 ounces, I have 2 glasses every time I drink it and probably fill that up at least 3 or 4 times. So it's like 6 to 8 glasses of apple cider turmeric saturated water, diluted in water, every day. So I really want to keep my gut biome natural, healthy. And so I was really perplexed the fact that I got sick because I haven't gotten sick in almost a year. However, I do notice that around this time every year, I seem to fall ill. And it's like after flu season, and I'm like, oh yeah, I survived the flu. Like, I didn't get it. You guys suck. I didn't need the flu shot. I don't do vaccines. But then come March, April, I'm calling out of work sick, and people are looking at me like, yo, like, you need to go home. You sound horrible. So these antibiotics have really kind of left me feeling wiped out. And I know it's because they've destroyed my gut biome. So what I'm trying to do is rebuild that internal flora of my gut system. I'd encourage you to do the same as part of just staying healthy. And there are studies that show, that it affects brain chemistry and a lot of different aspects of how we live. We are what we eat. I truly believe that. So speaking of what we eat, I am just missing what I could really go for right now is a Cubano. A Cubano, if you do not know, is a sandwich. I had to learn these things going into the city. I've pretty well traveled, but I haven't been to Cuba. I'd never lived in New York City. And if you want a Cubano in LA, you're going to have to find a particular sandwich shop. And you don't really have a lot of those in LA because it's a lot of vegan and health. And then if it's like straight comfort food, then you're getting your American burgers and stuff. I'm sure there's places that have them. I just wasn't looking for them. However, there is this bodega on the corner of somewhere around 128th Street, Harlem, y'all, and Madison and 3rd. And it's a bodega called Sammy's. And a gentleman named Sammy actually used to work there. When I got there, that was the first meal I had in New York City. $5 sandwich that is longer than a foot long. And my boy I was staying with in Harlem, white guy, lived on the 6th story of this apartment complex building. And he said, make sure you add bacon. And since these guys practice Islam, there was no pork in this bodega. So they had beef bacon. Oh my God. I love bacon. I've always loved bacon. But beef bacon totally changed the game. It was like lights out. Baby love me lights out. Like I was addicted. I was hooked. So it was something about the way Sammy made it. He made those Cubanos just with love, and he'd always talk, and he was real cool. And I was super nervous when I first got to New York City because I'm not from there. And you see all this stuff on TV. It's always about something bad happening in New York City. Like, we've all watched the detective shows, the movies. Like, if something's going down, it's going down in New York City. So, in 2014 was a hell of a year to be in New York City, let me tell you. There was Eric Gardner getting choked out by a cop. I was within a 10-mile proximity of when that happened. The Ebola virus was potentially about to start spreading in the city. It was in a hospital on the island. I was getting all these cues like it was probably time to go. And I was trying to make it in New York, don't get me wrong. But I'm sure the saying is true, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. I didn't make it in New York. And I'm not ashamed to say that because, one, it's not for everybody. I can be a bit of a softie, especially in the thick of my alcoholism. But my comfort, my warm spot in New York City, and the city showed me nothing but love. All that fear and anxiety I had. I remember my first ride on the subway as a young adult. I had visited as a kid, and my aunt got her finger like stuck in the door when it closed, and I fucking like started crying, and I was freaked out. I was like, "Oh, I don't like this place." Like, you almost took my aunt's hand off. But I came back as a young adult, and I was looking to get into the music industry. I was working with a fellow songwriter, musician, and he lived in Harlem. And I actually mentioned this in the first chapter of my book, Chasing God Alcoholically. And it was during these trials, this trying to get on my feet in New York City, that he would say this mantra: one step back, two steps forward. Because he saw how debilitating my anxiety, my frustration, my depression was. And so he wanted to give me an out to that and help me think critically. And ultimately, the one step back, two steps forward thing, it did work. It was just the fact that there's always going to be one step back. And I wasn't willing to accept that. So I would be on cloud nine when things are going well, and then something comes up, a bump in the road, and I'm devastated. And I shut down because of anxiety. The cortisol just drops, and my dopamine levels don't. And it's very frustrating. And if you deal with anxiety and depression, and you know a place like New York City is really, it's a defining place to be, because what I realize is that you have to be paid to live there. It is so expensive. It's so expensive. And gentrification was starting. You're seeing old bodegas getting shut down. So, how did I manage to survive in New York? Well, that first night in Harlem, 128th, I think, Street, 127th, my buddy had this girl. She went to like NYU or Hunter College or something like that. And we walked down to the subway after smoking some weed. And she was just talking to me the whole time on the subway. And I'm just like, my heart's pounding out my chest because I'm really doing this. I'm in New York City riding on the subway. Like, and that's an experience for a first timer, because you got all walks of life in one tin can going like 20, 30, I don't know how fast the trains go, miles per hour. And she said goodbye a few stops later. We went on to the studio, Midtown, and we were working out of the Manhattan Center. And so the studio we were in was pretty legendary, and it had just been used as a production house for a television show. I'm not going to name drop, but sometimes, you know, you carry names big enough, you got to drop them. But I don't need to do that right now because I don't know her. But this was a really cool venue. It was a really cool studio. It was on the ninth floor of the Manhattan Center. And if you've ever been to New York, if you're from New York, you know the Manhattan Center has two ballrooms, one on the first floor, one on the eighth floor, that's seventh. And we were above that. And so we would see these concerts going on. We'd see church services. I'm pretty sure I was like there when Hillsong, Carl Lentz, was performing church services on Sunday. And it was crazy because I'm super into his ministry, and I've actually been trying to delve more into his podcast after hearing him interview with Oprah. And I would walk through the ballroom because we wanted to get to the fire escape because that's where we smoked weed. We couldn't smoke weed inside the building, obviously. So we'd walk through this ballroom. Sometimes it was completely empty and it was really spooky. And sometimes they had shows going on, but we worked there. So it was no problem. Um, and at this time, my buddy suggested that he said, you need to leave all that religious stuff, all that woo woo at the door. And I decided to try living without believing in God. And I got a New York City Library card and I got books. I think Richard Dawkins, some atheists, non believers that attempted to have these books with arguments. Well, they have these books, but the arguments attempt to prove that God doesn't exist. And at no point did I find reason enough to believe that God doesn't exist. The arguments are there, they're just not sound. So, but I tried. I literally was like, you know what, I'm going to wipe this. Because he explained to me if we're going to be working with artists in the industry, like, people don't want to hear all that. You know, if you're going to be singing songs, like, I don't want you to be caught up. And you hear about people selling out and not wanting to sing certain songs. And then it's like, oh, they made me do it. And I get it as a performer. A job's a job. You know, I've seen my mother perform a very, you know, how do you say, soft core primetime television, like A&E channel mystery solve. She had a sex scene. And I never thought she would do that, but she did. And she's an actress, so that was part of the work. I didn't watch the whole episode. That was enough for me. But so I get the fact when you're like directed to do something as a performer, it's art. However, sometimes it's that message that it's projecting eats away at the artist so much that they can't live with themselves. And so they deny it, they reject it, they don't celebrate it. And that's not what we're here to do. That's not really art in that sense, unless it's supposed to come out of hate and pain and anguish, which is whatever. That's your thing. Um, so the Manhattan Center, Midtown, and my buddy, he would meet up with girls from different colleges, and we would smoke with them. And eventually, he got me a job as a bike messenger. And so over on 44th Street, I believe, there's I walked up these long, like, it's one set of stairs, but it goes up like 3 stories, longest flight of stairs ever. And this room is like an old, like, newspaper. Looks like one of those, like, old 1940s newspaper office buildings where there's just desks and people are all sitting at their desks and there's no cubicles and there's ceiling fans hanging from a vaulted ceiling, and the boss has his desk in the back. And I go and meet this guy and I have my resume saying I'm from Pepperdine, and he's like, okay, you're way overqualified for this. So obviously you got the job. And so I functioned as a bike messenger. Um, you start the job walking, so you get to know the city. And to wear a messenger shirt and walk around New York City and not know where I'm going was probably the most ironic thing ever, because tourists would ask me how to get to certain places and I would be just as clueless as them. And I didn't lie. I wouldn't tell them to go, some way and just make some stuff up. I would just tell them, I don't know. And they say, how do you not know? How do you not know? You're a delivery guy. And so that was pretty funny. And so I was on foot and I got my Metro card. It was like $25 for the week, unlimited rides on and off. So I was taking the subway, got to know the subway system. Um, Most of the time I was delivering newspapers, which is like the lowliest thing you can get paid for. It's very frustrating. And you have to deal with the doorman. They're like, oh, what happened to the paper boy this morning? I don't know. I'm just the messenger. I have no idea. Every single doorman, every single apartment I went to, it was pretty frustrating, but it was funny, and it was all a learning experience, and I was happy to be in the city. Um, but there, being a messenger, you see into the lives of people in New York. It was really interesting when doors open. Sometimes I remember there was a family, and I had a legal document, and this was like a high priority assignment, and I had finally gotten a bike, so they were giving me stuff like that, and they called me once I delivered it, and they said, oh, no, you need to wait for her to sign it. And this really elderly woman was there with her family, and so I had to go back to the apartment, and the daughter and the son-in-law answered the door, and I could see the family sitting around the table and very decrepit, and I explained to them, these lawyers, they need the papers back today, so I'm just here for you to sign them. And they're disappointed and obviously bereaved. This person is probably about to die, and I just wait while this woman has to sign away some will or some will and last testament, something really, it was so depressing. And I got the envelope and I went and delivered it. And besides that, there was a lot of going into these office buildings, or like for architects, a lot of architecture plans or camera lenses for photo shoots, things like that. And so, in addition to that, my buddy helped me get a job as a caterer. And I was catering for this high end restaurant that happened to have a B rating health code at the time. A family friend of his, really good Italian restaurant. And it was out of the village, Greenwich Village, always passing like St. Mark's, I think, or St. Mark's and Bleecker Street. Um, and I didn't really know where I was. I didn't know I was in the village. I didn't know I was in the heart of it. I was just like an ignorant child. So I get this job, and they tell me to be there at 6 a.m. 6 a.m. Okay, so in order to stay at this place with my buddy in Harlem, his roommate did not want me staying there. So I had to go up to the roof and climb over the fire escape. And he was the first fire escape. It was like at his bedroom window. And I would have to do this rain or shine, and he'd have to tell me when she went to sleep and that it was safe to come in. And living like that was no way to live, and having to leave at 6 a.m. Like, he'd have to check and make sure the coast is clear, or I'd have to creep out, and I couldn't use the restroom at night out of fear I would wake her up or she would hear two people. And I was like trying to find somewhere to pee in the morning, and that morning pee is like, it's the first thing you do as a man when you wake up, is that morning piss. And I didn't have a pot to piss in. I had to make do, running around Harlem trying to find gardens, or booking it to Central Park and trying to find somewhere there, because there's no public bathrooms. There are no public bathrooms in New York City. Like Europe, they have urinals outside, like little cubby holes, and in most American cities. But you can't do that in New York because people would live in, it's crazy. It makes sense, but it sucks. And that's what I'm saying. You gotta afford to live there, because if you can't afford a pot to piss in, you don't belong in New York City. But I was trying to make ends meet, and it was really cool. Catering, I got to see the city, and I got to drive a van. And actually, my first day on that job, there was like four of us, and two of us were riding in the back with all the food, and there were no seats back there, no seat belts. And a cop pulls over my manager and gives us all tickets for riding without seat belts. And I felt like a real New Yorker. I got pulled over by the feds. You can't stop me, But they did stop us. I had to get out the van. Eventually, they put me on as a driver, and it was real cool. I got to cater over on 26th Street and a bunch of studios. I remember, I think it was 12th Street. There was this one spot with this dude that works at elevator. He might still be there. Italian guy named Ferrari. He is gorgeous. And it was so funny because my boss was like, "Hey, looks like you lost a lot of weight, Ferrari. You looking good, man." And he knew like I was feeling him. He knew, but he could like had like broken English. Oh, it was very sexy. So I had actually had to make a stop there one time on my own, and he was working the elevator or whatever. I dropped off the food and I was gonna take the stairs downstairs, and he's like, "No, no, no, I'll take you down." And I was like, "You don't take me down, all right?" And we ran the elevator, and my game was weak. My game was so weak when I got out of college, especially New York City. My heart was already thumping, and I was on the job, so like I had to make it to the next gig. But I felt like he wanted something to pop off. So anyway, that's probably just me in my head. But Ferrari, if you're out there, ciao, bello, ciao. In any case, it was a great experience. I met some celebrities. I met Oprah for the second time, and it just so happened to be me and her in this in the craft services room, which is a huge room, and it was in between the actual photo studio where the photographers and the PAs were, and the makeup, which is in another room. And so she comes in, and it's just me in there because I'm waiting to pack up the food, and she's wearing this beautiful yellow gown, and she's got all this jewelry on. And I'm not gonna act like she's not walking through the room like it's Oprah Winfrey. So I look at her and I asked if she remembered me because I had met her almost exactly 7 years before. In 2007, I met her in Chicago at a Macy's department, and she took a picture with me and my mom. And my high school blew up this picture of me and Oprah, and my cousin was like, I'm known as a kid whose cousin knows Oprah, like, and I that picture still might be in that trophy case. I don't know. I hope not. I don't care. And I offered my hand, and she offered hers, and I gave her the princess shake. You don't just grab. She's wearing this fat diamond, and I just gently put my thumb on top of her fingers, and I waved up and down, and she said, "You know what? I do." And every time I've made eye contact with her on both occasions, I'm speechless. At first, I get that rush, like, okay, say something, introduce yourself, don't act crazy. But then once it sinks in who you're talking to, I was speechless. And I just smiled, and I think I mouthed thank you, but I just gave her that nod, like, "Thank you so much for saying that, for giving me this moment." And she went on to do the shoot, and the photographer's back was to me. So through this window, it kind of looked like she could have been watching me. And I'm like, I wonder if she's thinking, where do I know this boy from? But her security guard said she has a good memory. So I don't know. Maybe she remembers me, maybe not. But that was so cool. And it was crazy because it came at a time when I was really conflicted. And I knew this was the make or break part about New York City because I was dealing with a hostile work environment. I'm just not the one. I'm not the one. I have an abusive background, emotional, physical, sexual abuse. I was recently outed in college, came out the closet, still trying to find my own way as a young man, as someone, if I believe in God or not. And now I have this manager that is a bigot. And I mean, I was so confused. Like, he was talking about fire and brimstone raining down from heaven to kill all the homosexuals walking in Chinatown. And he's like pointing at guys with umbrellas and transgender people. And I'm like, how the fuck do you work in the village in New York City and have these points of view? But he was on some other shit anyway, because what we found out was that if he found out you were gay, he got one kid, made him quit pretty much because he tortured him so bad. And then he had punched another employee in the face. And I'm like, why is this dude still working at this place? Like, this is not a healthy environment. However, I was young, and obviously you can always handle a situation different, but when you're in it, I don't believe in victim blaming. You I handled it as best as I could, and I went to the New York City Department of Labor, and I made it known, but I lost that job too. So I at that time had found a room on Craigslist in Washington Heights. This girl, she was actually still staying in the apartment. She was renting me her room because she was trying to make rent. And she lived with some college girls, and one girl had actually gone to the same college I went to. So it was a real cool thing. We went down to the alphabet streets. Like, I think we went to this restaurant, Papaya, and then we went to a bar, and they really dug me. Like, as soon as I got there, this one girl broke out a guitar, and she was like, I know you can sing. And she started playing Adele, and never mind, I'll find someone like you. We started jamming. It was just so New York, and it was summer, and everything was kind of falling together, but shit got hot. It got hot real quick in Washington Heights. The place we were at was right above a liquor store, so you had to. And this liquor store, like, everything was behind bulletproof glass. Like, it was just all bulletproof glass, and there was always like crackheads and drug dealers hanging out outside. And then there was like this biker gang that was like doing wheelies at the street on four-wheelers and motorcycles. And I was like, all right, this is a little rough, but all I gotta do is make it to the subway, make sure nobody rough me up there, and then I'm down Harlem, down Midtown, doing my thing, down to the Village. I just fell out of it. And my buddy said, maybe if you put down the tall boys, I would always get a tall boy Pabst Blue Ribbon after a long day. And I didn't think it was my downfall. Of course, I was denying it. That was my relief. That was my escape. But my thing is, how do you cope when you're broke, damn near homeless? What else do you have? I have a $2 in my pocket. I can afford a tall boy. I know I'm going to be able to sleep. I felt like I couldn't sleep without drinking. But besides that, we had some really good times. When I actually went over to Newark, I took the PATH train to go to Walmart, and I got this bike because I know Walmart bikes have a warranty, and if anything broke, and then if I needed to return it, which is what I ended up doing when I wanted to get the fuck out of New York City, I just went back to Walmart, returned the bike, got my money back, and bought a plane ticket. And you can literally take a bus to the airport. Yeah, like, you're out of there. And so I just remember in Washington Heights, I would get so drunk that I would actually climb up and go out of like the storm door on the ceiling, and I was on top of the roof of this building, hammered. And if I would have fallen, I would have fallen probably 7, 8 stories, like, just blown out of my mind, like, not smart at all. And the landlord lived in the apartment downstairs, and he was a drug dealer, and he would hit on the girls, and the one girl that went to college with me, he made her feel really uncomfortable. And one morning, the other girls were like, yo, have you seen her? Because we didn't hear from her last night, and her door's locked to her bedroom. And so we're knocking on the door, and she ain't answering. I'm knocking, like, dude knocking. Doof, doof, doof. Hey, wake up. Anybody in there? And we can't lock it. I'm like, look, he killed this bitch. I start going to my room. My heart's pounding. I was like, I got to get the fuck out the city. This nigga's about to come and kill me. I start packing up my bag. I'm telling you, I was out the door. I was literally standing outside the door when this girl's bedroom door opened. And I said, oh my God. And she was like, oh, I got fucked up last night. I was wasted. I was just passed out. What's going on? I thought this bitch had gotten murdered. And I was like, this is no way to live. Like, if we're on edge like that. But maybe that's just the streets. I don't know. I'm a preppy kid. I'm a preppy boy. So New York taught me a lot about myself, and I tried. I said I was going to live in Central Park. Rode my bike down there. It was like I think early September, and it was a nice day at first. And literally right when I sat down, I see these storm clouds come over, and it just starts pouring rain. And I'm already on the Lower East Side. Well, I'm on the East Side, Central Park, and I know the men's shelter is on 33rd Street, and I go there and I check in. And that place is an old insane asylum. It is spooky looking as fuck. But it was my last resort. And I sat in there and I Snapchatted from the waiting room. It's like checking into a homeless shelter. Like, this is it. I've reached a new high in my life. But I figured if I could do that, and I could keep going, and something would click. And I tried to sleep, and they put this big Latino guy in the room with me in the middle of the night, and he snored, and I was like scared this guy was gonna kill me because I'm already in this insane asylum. This room used to house like crazy people, so I know this shit is haunted. In any case, I ended up transferring to a shelter in Brooklyn, and I would just miss the cutoff for this like young adult male shelter, like 18 to 24 or 25, and I just turned 25. And the thing about all these places is that you could not keep your stuff there during the day. They can guarantee you a bed, but you have to leave during business hours, like 8 to 5 or 8 to 6. Like, I get that you need to be working, but as a bike messenger, I could not function while carrying all my clothes and stuff like that. And my pride was so bit from my buddy kicking me out of his place in Harlem because his roommate, figured out I was sneaking in, and she was like, you know what? He's not doing you any favors. And I had fallen on hard times because I quit the catering job, so I was just relying on uh, bike messaging. And New York kicked my ass. New York kicked my ass. But the city showed me nothing but love. I got nothing but love from New York City. I just learned that, for me, I don't go places like that unless I'm getting paid to do it. I have no family there. I have no ties there. And the music industry, it got catty. It got catty. They told me to practice songs, pitch me songs just to keep me busy, use me as a little errand boy. And I was just happy to be there. I got to see Justin Timberlake at this MasterCard show, and that was what, like, the Mayor's 2020 tour. Yo, that was mind blowing, great. Um, I got to experience so much, and I had some friends from college that had moved out there, and they would let me crash on a couch like one night, 1 or 2 nights, and they're like, you know what, you gotta go, because in New York City, if you let somebody crash in your place, like, they staying, like, they are staying. So they made it very clear, like, you gotta go. And I just got a lot of resentment, and I wanted to drink, and I was drinking to cope, and then and I couldn't even afford a drink. I called my family, and a buddy of mine that I grew up with invited me to move in with him and his family in Florida. So I took the bike back to Newark, got my money back, found a cheap flight from LaGuardia, took the bus, and I was out of New York. But the memories I made there, will last me a lifetime for sure. And I know now when I go back, I know where I'm going. I know what it's all about. Like, I'm trying to finally, like, sit down and afford a meal at Sylvia's in that new restaurant next door with the dude from the Food Channel. I saw him standing out on Malcolm X Boulevard. I saw him. I saw the ladies doing Tai Chi in Central Park. And, like, I miss riding bikes around Central Park and, sneaking around and smoking. And, well, I don't really miss smoking weed because that shit makes me paranoid. But just, kind of being a kid in the city, and I see what it's all about. And there were 1 or 2 guys that I hooked up with, and they were hot. they were pretty hot. And I was like, hey, what's going on with where you're staying? And this guy's like, oh, it's like $500 a month. I'm like, $500 a month? He's like, yeah, it's rent controlled. And I'm like, yo, I'm homeless. You don't really pitch someone like, hey, I'm homeless. Like, can I move in after the first date? And they're like going down on you. But I thought about it. And eventually I did ask, I think, but I never got a response. He follows me on Instagram. So, what's up, dude? In any case, yeah, the Manhattan Center was sick. I know the last episode I had paranormal experiences, and I actually forgot to talk about this one night when we were wrapping up at the studio. The studio's on the top floor of the Manhattan Center. We get down the stairs and we get on the elevator at the eighth floor because the elevator don't go up to the ninth floor. And so me, my buddy, and this producer, his boss that like has the keys to the joint, we all get on this elevator. It's like 1:30 in the morning, 2 a.m. probably, and the elevator like moves up when the doors close, and there's nowhere to go up, and then it starts dropping, and all the numbers and lights start flickering. And this is like an old ass building. It's right next to the New Yorker Hotel. Like there's ways you can navigate through the New Yorker Hotel to get into the Manhattan Center, like secret doors and shit like that. And I know Nikola Tesla. I got really big into conspiracies and like secret societies and just all this stuff when I was there because it's the music industry, and I was very interested, and I was rubbing shoulders with people that were rocking some pretty sketchy stuff, like all seeing eyes and pyramids and stuff. And I'm like, am I about to sell out? And they had me trying to get me to sing these certain songs, and I didn't know if I was ready to sell out. And I, was like, oh, I don't believe in God right now, so I'm about to do this. But it's just like, are they really asking me to sell my soul? So I was already skating on thin ice, but elevator starts dropping, and the intercom has all the static comes on. Never has come on before. And this voice, this woman's voice, while we're dropping and the lights are flickering and the numbers are going off, and you just hear her say, "Get out. Get out." And we got to the bottom floor and we all ran out that bitch. And the security guard at the stand next to it, he was like, yo, like, there's alarms going off upstairs. Like, I didn't know anybody was up there. And we were tripping. We were like, yo, like, we're out. And so after that, I didn't really have a desire to be up there working late by myself, needless to say. There's a lot of history there, a lot of history, a lot of memories, and probably a lot of resentment because I know MTV started there, a lot of famous musicians. There's a rug there that Aaliyah, Aerosmith, all the greats in this one studio, the log cabin, they've stood on. And sometimes Timbaland was in the building, French Montana was in the building. We would know that they were there. I didn't meet them, but it was cool to know, okay, they're in there getting down, and I'm here too, and maybe I'm gonna make it. So, and that's what it's all about. It's all about taking these risks. Like I'm taking a risk right now doing this podcast, and I'm just really grateful to have people that listen. So, and no one's forcing you to listen. And I've been really kind of debating whether or not I should have shared so much on the first episode. However, I think that being honest and upfront, it's whatever I disclose, that's my edge. That's my tool. So that's what sets me apart, and that's what makes me different. And so that's part of my brand, and that's part of my advocacy too, because I'm not just doing this for the money. I'm doing this to represent a bigger message, and that's to help others like me. So I hope you do the same. Stay encouraged, stay motivated. I really appreciate you all. And you will be hearing from me soon. If you'd like to meet me, May 27th, I will be in Southern California. The event is posted on Eventbrite. It's a meet and greet with ER Hunter. I'm looking for fellow artists, musicians, authors, anybody wants to showcase your work. You're more than welcome to join me and be a vendor. You can make some money too. 10% of my revenue is going to be donated to Best Friends Animal Society in Los Angeles, which is where I adopted my puppy, Irie. They're a no-kill shelter, really clean. You can tell they treat the animals well, and so I'm all about that. They're not asking me to advertise. They're not asking me to do that. I just made them aware of this book signing. So once again, get your copies of Chasing God Alcoholically, as well as God Sent Dog. I think you'll really enjoy both of them. If you're looking for just a practical manual kind of pamphlet on how to get spiritual early on, and you're trying to get sober, you don't even have to be trying to get sober, but and you're trying to like connect with some type of higher power, Chasing God Alcoholically is really straight to the point. It's a really easy read, and I just dive right into it. And I really think that my higher power is speaking through me. It's not me. It's that text. And he also gave me the story of my dog coming into my life and how that helped me get sober and got me into recovery. And I ended up going to a pet friendly rehab. Like, how does that happen? That's God. I did not want to lose him, and God made sure that didn't happen. And for that, I am thankful. So I wrote a book about it, and I would love for you all to hear my story. It is, I get down to the nitty gritty. I mean, from North Hollywood to Riverside to Orange County, to doing drugs, man, drinking, man, sex, trying to find my way in this world and falling out of grace in Hollywood. It's all developed and culminated to this point, and I am so grateful, so grateful. I've decided to stay true to myself, and I encourage you to do the same. We might be apprehensive about what our voices sound like on the air or what people are going to think about us, but the fact of the matter is that if I die tomorrow, I would have hoped that I would have shared this information with the world. And so tomorrow's not promised. So here I am. Much more to come. There will be guests. However, right now this is very low budget. So what I'm going to do is set up an Indiegogo, some type of fund donation account to where you all can help me reach a goal to where we can get a studio, we can get mics, we can get a camera, because right now I'm borrowing all the supplies that I need to put this together and to produce it. I could really use your help. Any donation is greatly appreciated, and I will make sure to keep track of it so that the blessing is reciprocated in your life, whether that's prayer in the meantime, I'll put you on my prayer list, or in the long term a t-shirt or some type of tribute. But the Rhetorical Sake, we do need donations, so I would love, love, love to keep this content flowing. Help me do that. And we'll get some guests, and we'll travel, and we'll investigate, and we will talk about life, and we'll just have fun, enjoying this whole thing. And this helps me stay sober, so that's what I'm doing. This was a good hour that I did not drink, and that is a miracle. Or smoke meth, or pot, or do heroin, or any of those other addictive substances. So thanks for joining me. Stay true to yourself. You deserve it, and you owe it to the world. And they owe it to accept you. All right, y'all. Have a good one.